Brothers and sisters, happy feast of the presentation of the Lord. Today is also the World Day of Consecrated Life, where we celebrate those men and women who take the vows of obedience and poverty and chastity, or take promises of those same areas of life to choose to live a very close following of Christ, in a sense of through obedience to sacrifice that deepest part of themselves, which is their will, to hand it over to a mere human being like a superior, not blindly, not in a way that a superior could ask you to do something that jeopardizes your faith, but still it's to practice that deep obedience which marks the very life of Christ himself, who was obedient until death. Obedience comes from the Latin word audere, which means to hear, to listen. And it's basically a deep listening for the voice of God, even as religious, through our superiors, and ultimately the will of God in our life, and to try to conform our life to that, which oftentimes will involve suffering. And of course, this is for every Christian. And I suppose religious life that is surrounded by these promises or these vows to be obedient like Christ, to be poor like Christ, to denounce material possessions personally, and to own things in common in a community, and the chastity to live with one's heart singly for Christ, and to offer the gift of celibacy to God as a beautiful gift, that beautiful part of our life that is for marriage. We offer that to God as a gift, with the hope that would create an opening in our hearts that we would search even more for God, and that celibacy ought to drive us closer to Christ, and to discover the love of the Father and the power of the Holy Spirit even more deeply in our life, through finding intimacy with God. And so it's a wound in one sense, but it's a wound that calls forth for a great presence of God in one's life. And so, but these vows, they're witness to religious life. They're witness to the core of what all religious would share, irrespective of their different spiritualities, their different charisms. But it's fundamentally this witness. It's a witness. And as I said, the obedience of the will, that witness is for all Christians to be obedient to God. We may not be obedient to a particular superior, but then if you're at work and to be a good person, a good worker, one should be faithful to one's duties and what one is asked by their boss, etc., etc. We have the obedience within marriage. We have obedience to an extent to our legal, to our national authorities that are, the Christian tradition is that part of it is that the state is there. We have to be good citizens, and there's an obedience there within reason, and that won't jeopardize our faith. And so the vows of religious life are supposed to instantiate the gospel obedience of Christ in such a clear witness form that other Christians may look and be witnessed and inspired. And the same thing with poverty, that we're all called to have, as religious, we're called into like poverty, in fact, in a sense that at least we try to like, for example, us as Dominicans, we don't have bank accounts. We live on a small stipend that we get from the community. We do own things in common, our meals and the general surroundings, and often we can have very nice surroundings. So that's always a struggle too for us to live with that spirit of poverty in the world. And poverty is that vow which really says to us, or tries to teach us over time, that to find one's contentment in God, that God is enough, that God's grace and his love is enough. And poverty of heart is much deeper than more just material things. It's also to do with spiritual poverty, kind of detachment from things that we love, or people that we love even in the wrong way. That if we love people above God, then we need a spiritual poverty to be detached from them in the way that would put God first, and then we're able to love them in the right ordered way. Poverty of heart, is just that willingness even to let go of things that we thought were God's will, and to be able to be moved by God towards greater things, or towards God's will. So that poverty of spirit is really important. It's a beatitude, and we lived it as religious. We try to live it in fact, in material poverty, but also we try to practice its deeper meaning to in spiritual poverty. And again, that has a witness to everybody, no matter if you're a very wealthy person or a poor person, you still have to practice poverty of spirit, which is that Christ was poor. He chose material poverty, but he also had this deep detachment from things of the world and an attachment to God. And like I said, chastity points to that singleness of heart. You know, Kierkegaard says that chastity is to will one thing, is to will God's will, and to have that purity. So poverty, obedience, chastity, they move together, they're friends, they operate together, they shape each other, and they coexist with each other. And chastity allows us to have an all-inclusive love, that we don't have an exclusive love of a particular family, as Christ had a love for everybody. So we try to emulate Christ's love for the whole world in that way, and so we're free to love in that way.